In Florida, police remove a scaly intruder prowling in the Coconut Point Mall. Authorities say it took 8 officers to lift and transfer the 12-foot, 600-pound alligator into a truck. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. calls BRP Sierra Madre's repair a matter purely of Filipino concern. The Philippines reaffirms its participation in the international peacekeeping operations. Armed gangs running amok in central Nigeria cause hundreds of casualties. Torrential rains in southern Thailand cause widespread flooding. And Blackpink's Jennie Kim teases the next steps of her solo career under her own label and company.
Los Angeles,
Las Vegas, Nevada,
España,
Paris, France,
United Kingdom,
Washington, D.C.,
London Bureau, Papua New Guinea,
in New York,
Washington, D.C.
Mata ng Agila, Mata ng Agila,
Mata ng Agila International.
Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has stated that the condition of the BRP Sierra Madre, a warship serving as a Philippine Navy outpost at 2nd Thomas Shoal, is a matter solely for Filipinos to address. This statement comes amid reports that the United States is offering advice on repairing the vessel. While acknowledging U.S. assistance in conducting sea patrols, President Marcos emphasized that the situation of the Sierra Madre is a problem that Filipinos intend to handle independently. He pointed out that the U.S. is not the sole nation conducting patrols in the area, as Japan, South Korea, and Australia are also actively involved in the multinational effort to patrol the West Philippine Sea. 2nd Thomas Shoal has been a focal point of tensions between Manila and Beijing, with Chinese vessels attempting to hinder Philippine boats from delivering supplies to the BRP Sierra Madre. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP, is expressing a relatively strong outlook for the Philippine economy in the 4th quarter of 2023, anticipating growth similar to the 3rd quarter's surprise figure of 5.9%. According to BSP Director Dennis Lapid, this outlook is partially attributed to the lagged effects of one of the most aggressive policy tightening cycles in Asia. The key policy rate currently stands at 6.5%, having been increased from a pandemic-induced historic low of 2% starting in May 2022. Prior to the higher-than-expected expansion in the July-September quarter, GDP growth disappointed at 4.3% in the April-June period, primarily due to less robust private sector consumption and a decline in government spending. Lapid highlighted the national government's commitment to driving the economy towards its growth target of 6 to 7% for 2023. According to Capital Economics senior economist Gareth Leather, inflation in the Philippines is anticipated to further moderate in 2024 due to factors such as slower economic growth. Leather mentioned that the more volatile items of food and fuel price inflation are also expected to decrease. High agricultural prices could incentivize farmers to plant more crops, contributing to downward pressure on food price inflation. However, despite the anticipated moderation, Leather predicts that inflation in the Philippines will surpass the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas target of 2.4 or 2 to 4%. The projection is an average of 6.5% in 2023, decreasing to 4.5% in 2024. It is expected to return to the target range, specifically at 3.5% by 2025. Leather noted that interest rates in the region are currently at multi-year highs and are likely to decline slowly over the years. The Department of Interior and Local Government, or DILG, has advised the public to remain alert as an uptick in online scams has been observed this holiday season. The agency said that the public may report online scams using the Scam Watch Pilipinas website using www.scamwatchpilipinas.com. This can be done by clicking the hotline button to call their emergency number 1326 or via the messenger button to submit a report to the Cybercrime Investigation and Coordinating Center or CICC. The Department of Budget and Management, or DBM, has said that the Marcos administration is set to cut its reliance on borrowing to support spending to lessen the country's debt burden. Budget Chief Amena Pangandaman explained that the national government's budget deficit as a percentage of the economic growth has been consistently dipping from its peak during the height of the coronavirus pandemic. A budget deficit occurs when the government spends more money than it taxes or it takes via taxes and other sources of revenue. This is financed through loans. Pangandaman, however, clarified that borrowing money is still essential for the government as long as they are aimed towards productive initiatives. Last week, President Ferdinand Marcos vowed that his administration would create a legacy free from heavy debt burdens for future generations. Meanwhile, the Budget Department would stand united with the President in upholding the taxpayers who enable the national budget. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has approved the extension of reduced tariffs on rice, corn, and meat products until the end of December 2024. The temporary modification of rates was first approved in 2021 and it was extended this year due to high inflation. Marcos said the present economic condition of the Philippines warrants the continued application of the reduced tariff rates on rice, corn, and meat to maintain competitive prices in the markets. The stability of food prices is one of the primary concerns for the Marcos administration since there are looming threats of El Niño shortages and African swine fever. Inflation was at 4.1% in November but has averaged 6.2% in the first 11 months of 2023. The said inflation average sits outside the Philippine Central Bank's 2 to 4% target for this year. The Department of National Defense has reiterated its commitment to actively participate in international peacekeeping operations. Defense Undersecretary Angelito De Leon announced the allocation of one Quick Reaction Force company and one military engineering company to the UN Peacekeeping Capability Readiness System. This is in addition to the existing commitments of a Force Headquarters Support Unit and an Aeromedical Evacuation Module that the Philippines pledged to the UN. Furthermore, the country has affirmed its dedication to providing trainers for the UN mobile training teams and supporting the UN military experts on mission or UN MEMS. Over the past 60 years, the Philippines has actively engaged in UN peacekeeping, deploying 15,000 Filipino soldiers to 21 peacekeeping operations and special political missions. Coming up, Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has confirmed his arrival at an Arctic prison. Armed groups kill over 100 people in central Nigeria. And Israel hits Bethlehem on a holiday raid. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when Mata ng Agila International returns.
My name is Lizzie. I hate New Year.
Amoy mayaman!
Ano ba yan? Hindi na talaga nakakatawa at sakit sa tenga!
Ang New Year, dapat fresh start tayo.
Hindi naman mawawala yung mga problema. Kasi ano ba ang pala desisyon mo? Ayoko nga yung mga ganyang pagpaandar na yan!
Love, Boss Leng and Tali. Tuwing linggo, alas 6 ng gabi dito lang sa Net 25.
Let's net together sa Net 25. Sa Net 25.
Welcome sa bukod tanging game show na mapapanood sa telebisyon na hindi kailangan maging henyo para manalo.
Please welcome our Gamers na Promodizers!
Hello po, good morning sir. Baka gusto nyo try si Vitamin C. Nanasilig na rin siya sir, alkaline base na naglalabas ng acidity sa katawan. Pwede po siya sa may mga UTI, may ulcer. Kasi sir, nanasilig siya. Nanasilig na rin.
Agad-agad! Anong musical instrument ang ginawa ni Bartolomeo Cristofori noong 1704? Nagsisi ka ba na pinindot mo?
Akala ko madali lang.
Akala mo madali, no? And this is not a game! Level up!
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. China warned that remnants of a rocket would hit an area in the South China Sea on Tuesday. China Maritime Safety Administration expected the rocket debris to fall off the coast of Hainan province. Authorities said the debris came from the Long March 5 rocket, which was launched last December 15. Beijing has often touted the Long March 5 mission as a high-orbit optical remote sensing satellite, which will be used in land surveys, crop yield assessments, environmental management, and meteorological warnings.
Associates of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny have reported that he has been located at a prison colony above the Arctic Circle, nearly 3 weeks after contact with him was lost. Navalny, a prominent critic of Russian President Vladimir Putin, is serving a 19-year sentence on charges of extremism. He was initially imprisoned in the Vladimir region but lost contact with his lawyers on December 6th. His spokesperson, Kia Yagmish, confirmed that he is in a prison colony in the town of Kark in the Yamalo-Nenets region, around 1,900 kilometers northeast of Moscow. Navalny has been in Russian custody since January 2021, following his return from Germany, where he was treated for nerve agent poisoning, which he attributed to the Kremlin.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has privately sent signals that he is open to peace talks with Ukraine. Sources familiar with the issue say since September, Putin has been directing intermediaries to talk with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to agree to a ceasefire. The deal includes freezing hostilities on the current contact line. The Russian president has repeatedly explored the possibility of peace talks with Zelensky. More recently, Putin has shown renewed interest in a ceasefire as the Russia and Ukraine conflict enters its 2-year mark. He said he is waiting for the United States presidential election to be over before making another peace effort. But sources also say some Western officials remain skeptical of Putin's willingness to compromise. There are also reports that former Moscow officials believe that Putin may well change his mind again if Russian troops gain more defensive stance. War experts say Putin is considering a confluence of factors that create a favorable moment for the peace talks. Among these factors are a stalemated battlefield, the aftermath of Ukraine's failed offensive, the supposedly weak support of the West for Kyiv, and the distraction from the Russo-Ukrainian war due to war between Israel and Hamas.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a decree clearing the way for Rosbank to purchase stakes in leading Russian companies owned by Societe Generale or SocGen. The decree allows Rosbank to purchase SocGen stakes in energy producers such as Rosneft and Gazprom. Rosbank can also buy stakes in metals companies including Norilsk Nickel and Severstal and other leading Russian blue-chip firms. Data from the European Banking Authority said as of end June 2021, Rosbank had an exposure of 22.4 billion euros to Russia.
Despite the danger of attacks from the Houthi group, shipping giant Maersk plans to restart shipping activities in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Maersk says it would stop rerouting vessels around southern Africa, a long and costly route. Instead, it would proceed shipping through the Suez Canal after the U.S.-led Operation Prosperity Guardian was launched. The United States said the multinational operation would protect commerce in the Red Sea from the Yemeni Houthis. But Maersk warns it could reverse the decision depending on the navigation risks.
Thousands gathered in front of a Belgrade police station on Monday in support of those arrested the previous day during protests against what they say was electoral fraud in Serbia's recent elections. It's the 8th consecutive day of protest. Bernadette Regini has the details.
The main opposition coalition, Serbia Against Violence, denounced what it says is electoral fraud, alleging that voters from neighboring Bosnia had been allowed to cast ballots illegally in the capital. Several Western countries also expressed concern. Unlike Sunday's demonstrations, Monday's protest tended to be peaceful. It began with roadblocks in the capital and later a gathering in front of the State Electoral Commission building. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić had announced violence in the capital the previous evening when opposition demonstrators had tried to storm Belgrade City Hall and clashed with police. Vučić says there is evidence the violence had been planned in advance. Moscow on Monday had also accused the West of interfering, suggesting that foreign actors were trying to stir up the unrest. Earlier Monday, Vučić met the Russian ambassador in Belgrade and briefed him on the Sunday's incidents. Vučić is walking a difficult line balancing between East and West, vowing to keep Serbia on a course for European Union membership while also remaining friendly with Russia and courting Beijing and Washington. Bernadette Regini for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Armed groups carried out a series of attacks on villages in central Nigeria, resulting in at least 160 people killed, as reported by local government officials. The toll sharply rose from the initial figure of 16 dead reported by the army. Over 300 wounded individuals were also confirmed, with many transferred to hospitals in Bokos, Jos, and Barkin Aladi. The attacks, orchestrated by armed groups referred to locally as bandits, targeted more than 20 communities, leading to widespread destruction and the torching of houses. A provisional toll by the local Red Cross indicated 104 deaths in 18 villages in the Bokos region, and an additional 50 people reported dead in several villages in the Barkin Aladi area. Following the attacks, Nigerian State Parliament member Dixon Colum condemned the violence and urged swift action by security forces. Amnesty International criticized the government, stating that Nigerian authorities have failed to address frequent deadly attacks on rural communities in the region.
Iran's foreign ministry rejects Washington's worthless claims that a drone attack targeting a tanker off the coast of India was fired from Iran. Jay Suarez has the details.
A Japanese-owned chemical tanker was targeted amid a flurry of drone and missile attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels in the Red Sea in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. The Pentagon later openly accused Tehran of the attack. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Nasser Kanani says the U.S. claims are completely rejected and worthless. Kanani says such claims are aimed at projecting, distracting public attention, and covering up for all the full support of the American government for the crimes of Israel in Gaza. Yemeni rebels' recent attacks on shipping vessels in the Red Sea have prompted major firms to reroute their cargo vessels around the southern tip of Africa. This means a much higher voyage with higher fuel costs. Iran has repeatedly dismissed U.S. and Israeli accusations that Tehran is involved in the attacks by the Houthis. Iran says the group is acting on its own. Jay Suarez for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Iran state media reported that a senior Iranian commander was killed in a suspected Israeli strike in Syria. IRNA said military advisor Sayed Razi Musavi died in an airstrike on the Sayyida Zainab area southeast of Damascus. The news agency added that the general was active in the field supplying logistical support to the axis of resistance in Syria. Meanwhile, Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi said that Israel will certainly pay for the death of the senior general along with the Revolutionary Guards. Syria's civil war broke out in 2011 with Israel launching hundreds of airstrikes on its northern neighbor, targeting Iran-backed forces, Hezbollah fighters, and Syrian army positions.
Israel has announced their intention not to renew the visas of United Nations staff members and will also deny the visa requests of other UN employees as it expresses displeasure over the international community's criticism of Israel's war in Gaza. Recently, Israel has taken flack from the international community for their indiscriminate targeting of civilians and hospitals due to their airstrikes, with the current Palestinian death toll breaching 20,000. Israel's Minister of Foreign Affairs Eli Cohen posted on X, and I quote, "We will stop working with those who cooperate with the Hamas terrorist organization's propaganda." Cohen described the UN's conduct as a disgrace, despite the UN criticizing Hamas for the October 7 attack and repeatedly calling for the release of captives by the group. On the other end, UN officials have also called out Israel's targeting of residential areas, schools, and hospitals, as well as cutting off basic resources to the Gaza Strip. Their airstrikes have also resulted in the deaths of more than 100 journalists, about 270 medical personnel, and at least 134 UN staff. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has repeatedly called for a ceasefire, going as far to invoke Article 99 of the UN Charter aimed at formally warning the Security Council of the global threat posed by Israel's aggressions on Gaza. Israel's foreign minister has accused the UN chief, the UN Human Rights Commissioner, and the UN Women's Agency of legitimizing war crimes against humanity. But human rights groups have also slammed Israel for their war tactics, calling it a collective punishment of Gaza's 2.3 million people.
Dozens have been arrested as Israeli forces stormed Jenin in areas around Nablus. Holidays in the occupied West Bank began with an attack on the Jenin refugee camp and several arrests. The raid on Monday morning followed several others across the territory, which saw dozens of arrests and the shooting in the neck of a 17-year-old boy. Among the towns hit was Bethlehem. Jenin, commonly viewed as a symbol of Palestinian resistance to occupation, has been repeatedly targeted by Israeli forces since the war began on October 7. On Monday, the Jenin-based Freedom Theater, a popular symbol of peace and hope, was recently raided and vandalized by Israeli soldiers. Its staff described how Israeli forces lit up the sky with flare bombs during the raid.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu found a less than receptive audience Monday as he addressed parliament. Families of hostages taken by Gaza militants heckled Netanyahu as he spoke. Ralph Cornell tells us more.
Relatives of the Hamas captives became angered when Netanyahu promised to bring the hostages home, but said more time was needed. They booed him from the galleries and chanted, "Now, now." But Netanyahu says Israeli forces first need to increase military pressure on Gaza's rulers. He says without it, they won't be able to secure the release of the hostages. Over the cries of protesters, the Prime Minister says Israel won't stop until victory is achieved. Israel says 129 hostages abducted on October 7th when Hamas gunmen attacked southern Israel are still being held in a Palestinian territory. Netanyahu's address came after his Likud party reported that he visited the Gaza Strip on Monday and vowed to step up the army's assault in the Palestinian territory. Ralph Cornell from Watanang Agila International, Trusted Connected, On Point.
Nigeria has allowed lenders to work with digital token companies, reversing a ban imposed by the central bank in 2021. In February 2021, Nigeria's central bank ordered deposit-taking financial institutions to close accounts that transact with crypto exchanges, saying such transactions were prohibited. But now lenders can open accounts for cryptocurrency companies. Analysts say the easing of bank regulations will boost exchanges looking to expand their presence in Nigeria.
Toyota Motors small car unit Daihatsu Motors says it will compensate 423 domestic suppliers with which it has direct business relations. The car company has temporarily stopped its production in Japan until the end of January to address a safety scandal issue. It also halted shipments of all its vehicles after an investigation found issues involving 64 models, including almost 2,000 units sold. A spokesperson for the company says they are working to assess the impact of the stoppage on its sprawling supplier network. Up next, southern Thailand is plagued by extreme flooding. Thousands of migrants in Mexico march towards the U.S. border. And China takes aim at the video game industry. Please don't go away. We've got more stories from around the globe when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Mga kauno, Joey De Leon po, ang original na prankster at your prank service. At iniimbitahan ko kayo, samahan kami tuwing alas 8 ng gabi, Sabado, sa Oh No, It's BO, Biro Only. Tiyak na mapapa-ono kayo sa mga pranks at practical jokes at biro nating mga BO, as in best and original. Kasama ang ating mga kulit prankito at prankitas. Always remember, mga kauno, Sabado night, it's BO night. It's BO.
Oh no, it's BO. Biro Only sa Net 25.
Let's get together sa Net 25.
Ang mikroponong ito'y naglalahad ng saloobin, oras na para ipasa sa bagong makatanabi. Galing ay ipamalas, pangarap ilabas, itodo ang lakas, rap sa Pilipinas.
Heavy rainfall in southern Thailand has affected tens of thousands of people. The deluge has forced some roads and railway lines to close. Rose Papaangelis reports.
Classes have been canceled in at least a dozen schools in 2 provinces because of the flooding. Here you see the water is waist deep. Shops and homes have been inundated with the murky water. Some people have sought refuge from the water in the upper floors of their homes or rooftops. People are being warned to be ready to evacuate if the situation worsens. The state railway line says trains headed south to the Malaysian border have to stop at Yala, 100 kilometers away because of flooding. Not only are people on land affected by the heavy rain. Authorities say at least 7 boats sank in the Gulf of Thailand and Andaman Sea since Friday. Rose Papaangelis from Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Cliff divers have resumed their legendary jumps in the Mexican resort of Acapulco. They had paused their shows for 45 days after a deadly hurricane wiped out most of the resort's tourist establishments. Estela Dominic has the details.
The cliffs known as La Quebrada have been the site of high diving performances for tourists since 1934. Following Hurricane Otis, the accumulation of debris along the coast of La Quebrada made the waters unsafe for swimmers and divers alike. A couple weeks ago, Acapulco's divers announced that they will slowly resume the shows, offering 2 schedules during the December holidays, depending on the number of tourists. These divers jumped more than 40 meters from the cliffs into a narrow channel below in what is one of the best-known performances in Acapulco. In 2021, the performance won the Touristic Excellence Award in a competition that also included European and Middle Eastern tourist attractions. And while the performances have resumed, residents of the city face challenging times. Much of Acapulco still lacks running water and many people are still missing. The official death toll from the hurricane is 50, but local news agencies claim that figure could be up to 7 times higher. Estela Dominique from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
A murder inquiry has been initiated after the bodies of a woman and her 4 children, aged between 9 months and 10 years old, were discovered in a residence northeast of Paris. The bodies were found in the town of Mieux, and the police are searching for the 33-year-old father, who is reportedly on the run. There were no signs of a break-in when the police investigated the scene of the crime, and the children's father was found to be absent and is now being treated as the primary suspect. This incident follows a series of infanticides in the Paris region, including a case in late November where a 41-year-old man confessed to killing his 3 daughters, and another case in October when a policeman killed his own 3 daughters.
Slovakian police have arrested a 64-year-old man in the northern city of Žilina who had threatened to carry out a massacre similar to the mass shooting in Prague, where a student opened fire at a university, resulting in 14 people killed and 25 injured. The arrested individual had called emergency services, claiming his intent to replicate the Prague incident, and now faces prosecution for spreading general alarm, which carries a maximum penalty of 2 years in prison. Czech police have also made additional arrests related to the Prague shooting, including a man who expressed the desire to acquire a gun for a similar massacre. Another arrest was made when a man threatened to kill the surviving members of the Prague gunman's family. There have been several other security incidents contributing to a general sense of public unease since the tragic events in Prague.
A massive 12-foot, 600-pound alligator was found in Estero, Florida. Lee County Sheriff's Office reported that the alligator was caught prowling by the entrance of Coconut Point Mall. Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission rushed to the scene to apprehend the gator. Authorities said it took about 8 people to lift the reptile into the back of a truck.
A plane carrying hundreds of Indian nationals who were held for days at an airport in France over a human trafficking scheme has finally arrived in India. Passengers of the Airbus A340 avoided questions from the media as they quickly exited the Mumbai airport. They also covered their faces to shield their identities. The chartered plane was initially bound for Nicaragua when it was detained last Thursday at Vatry Airport, where it had stopped for refueling. French authorities grounded the plane after an anonymous tip-off that it was carrying potential victims of human trafficking. It left with 276 passengers, but 25 people, including 2 minors, remained in France after applying for asylum. 2 suspected traffickers also remain in France for further investigation. The 2 were set free by the courts. The Indian government has not yet issued an official statement about the incident.
Ukraine has accused the New York Times of working for the Kremlin. This is after Kyiv's information warfare agency claimed that journalists covering the Russia-Ukraine conflict have been recruited by the Russian Secret Service. The Center for Countering Disinformation explained that the outlet's recent article about the prospects of peace negotiations between Moscow and Kyiv cited that the United States and international officials claimed that Russian President Vladimir Putin was sending signals for intermediaries. This was for a ceasefire that would freeze the fighting on the front lines. The agency condemned the angle, suggesting that Moscow might be sending signals to prevent further military aid for the Ukrainian armed forces from the West. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov dismissed the reports as incorrect. Peskov clarified that Russia's military strategy towards Ukraine remains unchanged.
A large caravan of migrants made its way through Mexico, traveling towards the border with the United States from Central America, Venezuela, Cuba, and other nations. The estimated 6,000-person caravan is the biggest in over a year, with many of the participants being families with small children. This suggests that the Biden administration's and President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador's government's efforts combined to discourage migration are failing. In May, Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador agreed to take in migrants from countries such as Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba who have been turned away by the United States for deficiencies in asylum policies and other forms of migration. Now they take to the streets to protest ahead of the visit of Antony Blinken, United States Secretary of State. Security forces looked on in what appeared to be a repeat of past tactics when authorities waited for the marchers to tire out and then offered them a form of temporary legal status that is used by many to continue their journey northward.
Hoy caminamos los más pobres de los más pobres de los más pobres, los que estamos en la cúspide de la necesidad. Esos estamos caminando, los que no tenemos dinero para pagar visas, los que no tenemos dinero para pagar un coyote, los que no tenemos dinero para pagar a un pollero.
Sunday's caravan was the largest since June 2022, when a similarly sized group departed as Biden hosted leaders in Los Angeles for the Summit of the Americas.
Pero no somos animales. No nos pueden dejar en esta ciudad al arbitrio de cualquier cosa. Por eso hoy hemos decidido caminar. Es el último recurso que el Estado mexicano nos deja.
As businesses in London, England look for ways to beat the twin problems of traffic and carbon emissions, cargo bikes are becoming a common sight on the city streets. Sales of the electric bikes are up 30% this year. Thomas I. Likeness has that story.
Looking at this time-lapse shot of London traffic, it's easy to see why a number of people have switched to e-bikes to get around. Joe Sharp says making the change is a no-brainer.
We can get through the traffic faster, we can get across town quicker. Ultimately, it's cheaper for the folks who pay to use our services.
He says with a van, they might do 8 to 10 deliveries a day, but with a cargo bike, they can handle 30 to 40. Plumber Ben Hume Wright leaves his pickup truck parked most of the time, instead just taking the tools he needs to a job on his e-bike. And not having to fight traffic with a big vehicle means he can arrive at the job site on time.
If I need to get in a certain amount of jobs in a day, if I'm running late for an appointment, I know on my e-bike exactly when I'm going to arrive to the nearest minute or two.
It's a booming market for companies that sell e-bikes. Ben Giaconelli is head of the e-bike retailer Fully Charged. He says conditions on the streets make the vehicles an easy sell.
Every day in the paper there's another thing, London's traffic has grown to a halt, fuel prices have gone through the roof, ULEZ, pollution, this, that, it's just everything. It's like a pyramid that has basically built the market for e-bikes.
Despite the growth, the UK still lags behind some other European countries in adopting cargo bikes. But with a 30% increase in e-cargo bike sales in the year to May 2023, it's clear that the market is growing. Thomas I. Likeness from Atanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
China is set to bring new rules aiming to limit the amount of money and time people can spend on video games. This triggered a share market to tumble in some of the nation's biggest tech giants worth billions of dollars. The draft legislation regulates in-game purchases as well as prevents obsessive gaming behavior. Part of the proposed initiative is a ban on forbidden online game content that risks national unity and harms national security, reputation, and interests. Beijing started the move against the gaming sector last 2021 to crack down big tech firms, including a strict cap on the amount of time children could spend playing online.
Coming right up, Afghan women face a major educational roadblock under the Taliban rule. Luka Doncic makes NBA history against Devin Booker and the Phoenix Suns. And Blackpink's Jennie Kim announces a new path for her solo career. Catch the latest in sports and entertainment. Mata ng Agila International will be back.
Pangarap na sana mapababa natin ang presyo ng bigas ng 20 piso. Hindi pa tayo umabot doon.
Hindi na po itutuloy ng Office of the Vice President ang kahi para sa confidential funds.
Makinig na sa gobyerno, ICC, at pupunta na rito.
Maliwanag ang sinabi ng Presidente dyan. We have no legal duty to cooperate.
Itong napakaagang bangayan sa politika, hindi makakatulong.
Wala akong ibang ipinakuusap, ibasura yung consolidation.
Ang kulit naman.
Sama-sama natin hinarap dito sa ASPN ang mga may init na issue ngayong 2023. Kaya't sa pagtatapos ng taon, huwag bibitiw at samahan pa rin ang Team ASPN tuwing Lunes hanggang Biyernes. Dito lang sa Net 25.
A collection of confiscated letters reveal a compelling narrative of Spain's colonial rule in Morocco. These hidden messages provide the forbidden love stories between Spanish women and Moroccan men during the colonial era between the 1930s and the 1950s. Natalie Pichi has the details.
Expressions of love and longing linger among each confiscated letter, which were almost forgotten, if not for the researchers Joseph Luis Mateo Dieste and Nieves Muriel Garcia. Stored in the depths of Spanish archives, these letters, which are often accompanied with photographs, uncover pieces of relationships maintained in the shadows. Such clandestine romances were perceived as a threat by Spanish authorities that were under the regime of General Francisco Franco, whose intent was to preserve the prestigio de raza, or prestige of race. Evidently, reflected in the letters was the administration's aim to maintain colonial hierarchy and racial purity that was challenged by these relationships. However, a double standard applies for relationships between Spanish men and Moroccan women, which were not viewed as harshly for they play in the hands of the Spanish colonial narrative. The confiscated letters never reached their recipients and now serve as tangible evidence of the human spirit enduring in the face of systemic oppression. Natalie Pichi reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In an eastern Indonesian village, school children scrawl the distinctive circles and lines of the Korean Hangul script on their notebooks. But the language they are learning is not Korean. It is their indigenous Cha-Cha tongue. EJ Gonzalez reports.
The language of the Cha-Cha ethnic group has no written form. Its syllable-based tongue does not readily translate to the Latin alphabet often used to transcribe Indonesia's national language, Bahasa. However, the Korean Hangul script shares a syllable-based system that has made it an unusual tool in the effort to preserve and transmit the language of the approximately 80,000 Cha-Cha people. In ancient times, leaders of the community committed the language to scraps of paper and wood using non-standard symbols. But they never passed these down and the language began to wither away. Now in the community of Baobao, Cha-Cha names dot the names of schools, streets, and government institutions rendered in Hangul. The tongue is also taught to students from elementary to high school using Hangul symbols, though it remains largely a spoken rather than written language. Even the spoken form of Shasha faces pressure from the dominance of Bahasa Indonesia and other regional languages. EJ Gonzalez from Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Schoolgirls in Afghanistan mourn their last year of studying following the Taliban's mandate to put an end to their education. The sixth graders wept as they reached the highest level of education they could attain under the Taliban regime. Catherine Urtula has that story.
There are no graduation ceremonies for the students of Bibi Razia High School in Kabul. The 13-year-old student Bahara Rastam attended her final class this month, knowing that she is unlikely to enter a classroom again. Rustam shares that her expectations of graduating 6th grade means moving forward, but all of her classmates cried and were very disappointed. The Taliban rule declared this mandate of bearing girls to study beyond 6th grade in 2021 and was extended to universities in December 2022. Last week, United Nations Special Envoy Rosa Otunbayeva expressed concern for this generation's Afghan girls, saying that they are falling behind with each day that passes. An official in the Education Ministry said that all girls were allowed to study in religious schools or madrasas, but Otunbayeva said it was unclear if there was a standardized curriculum that allowed modern subjects. The 2-year ongoing Taliban regime reportedly promised to honor women's rights within the norms of Islamic law. As of now, the Taliban continues to impose bans on public places and jobs for women, confining them in their homes. Afghanistan also remains to be the only country that restricts female education. Catherine Urtula from Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Maverick star Luka Doncic joins the NBA's 10,000-point club, matching Hall of Famer Bob McAdoo for 7th fastest in league history. Vin Pasqua has the score.
Luka Doncic recorded 50 points, 15 assists, 6 rebounds, 4 steals, and 3 blocks, and also went over 10,000 career points while leading the Dallas Mavericks to a 128-114 victory over the host Phoenix Suns. If you don't know it yet, Luka Doncic is him. Luka reached 50 for the 6th time in the regular season and made 8 3-pointers as Dallas won its 2nd straight after losing 4 of its previous 5 contests, while also reprising his role as Devin Booker's dad. His supporting cast didn't lag him behind as Derrick Jones Jr. added 23 points. Derek Lively had 20 points and 10 rebounds, and Tim Hardaway Jr. scored 18 points for the Mavs. Phoenix's Grayson Allen scored a season-high 32 points and matched his career best of 8 3-pointers. Shimezi Metu had career bests of 23 points and 19 rebounds for the Suns, who have lost 9 of their past 12 games. The Suns' supposed core had a quiet performance as Devin Booker contributed 20 points and 10 assists. Kevin Durant scored 16 points and Eric Gordon had 14. Doncic had more points in the first half than the combined output of Booker and Durant as Dallas led 64-54 at the break. The Suns trailed by 13 early in the third quarter but moved ahead behind Allen, who exploded with 19 points on 7 of 9 shooting in the period. He made 5 3-pointers in the quarter. When asked about the win, Doncic responded playfully about how he loves to play against his favorite crowd and his rival Devin Booker.
So, Luka, you got a 50-burger, you scored your 10,000th point, and you were winking at the crowd, you were smiling at the crowd, you told them whose house when you hit the 10,000th point. What is it about this place and the road crowd that you enjoy playing against the most?
Oh, first of all, I didn't say whose house it is. Somebody was yelling, "You suck," so I said, "Who sucks?" I asked him. But, I mean, we got to win, man. Like I said, we have to have next man up mentality. It's a great road win. They have an amazing team, so I'm really proud of this team.
Reporting for sports, Vin Pasqua for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Kevin Spacey has teased the potential return of his character Frank Underwood to the acclaimed political drama House of Cards. In a 7-minute clip during an interview with Tucker Carlson, Spacey was in character as Underwood. He suggested that Netflix owes its early success to him in the House of Cards and expressed his view that it was bizarre for the streaming platform to cut ties with him based on unproven allegations. Frank Underwood was written out of the series in 2017 amid multiple allegations of sexual misconduct against Spacey. In July of 2023, Spacey was found not guilty of all 12 sexual assault charges in a UK trial. In response to Carlson's question about when Kevin Spacey was getting back to work, Spacey, in character as Frank Underwood, provided an ambiguous answer. He suggested that the video itself and the interview were a blend of an episode and reality, leaving the possibility open to interpretation.
Netflix exists because of me. I put them on the map and they tried to put me in the ground.
Do you think within Netflix and the leadership suites that your influence is still felt?
Well, according to your research, my influence is felt every time every customer opens the app. I'd say that's pretty powerful.
Oh, that's true. When are you getting back to work, by the way?
Oh, I've been back at work from the moment we started talking, Tucker. I mean, Tucker, what's true, what's false? What's life, what's art? What's real, what's performance? I love it when these things intersect because then it gets interesting.
What role do you see yourself playing going forward?
I will play whatever role the public wants me to play.
Blackpink is having a massive year, not only as a group, but also in their solo careers. 2023 is the gift that keeps on giving, and Blackpink's Jennie Kim plans to end it with a bang. The K-pop superstar surprised her fans on Instagram by announcing a major move for her solo career in 2024 with her own company, OA. OA stands for Odd Atelier, and it aims to create new things and attract attention in different ways than the traditional K-pop machine. The label was founded by artist Jennie in November 2023. OA's new Instagram account has now garnered about 1 million followers, despite any major announcements regarding their new venture. Thanks in part to Jennie posting a black and white picture of herself in a hoodie with an OA logo emblazoned at the back. Meanwhile, in early December, YG Entertainment announced that all 4 members of Blackpink renewed their exclusive contract as a group. So we'll be seeing Blackpink members Roseanne Park, better known as Rosé, Jennie Kim, Jisoo Kim, and Lisa Manoban, or just Lisa, together for quite a while. Blackpink is the most successful K-pop girl group on US market, becoming the 3rd K-pop group to top the Billboard 200 in 2022. Aside from headlining Coachella earlier this year with their album Born Pink, they were also named honorary members of the Order of the British Empire. It has been quite a year for the group. This year, Jennie also released her new solo single entitled You and Me, and also made her acting debut in the HBO drama series The Idol.
And to send you off tonight, here's a quote from author and entrepreneur Michael Altshuler. The bad news is time flies. The good news is you're the pilot.
I think we can all agree that the idea of time tends to be intimidating, but that intimidation completely goes away once you get a hold of what you do with your time and embrace it. It could be relaxing. It doesn't have to be productive all the time. It's really up to you.
Whatever it is, try not to waste it. Because it's time you can get back.
Yeah, that's probably something we're all thinking about near the end of the year now.
That's right.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I'm Nina Richie Lago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point. Thank you for choosing and On Point with stories from around the globe. Follow, like, and subscribe to AtNet25 TV.